Lots going on this evening. Gary Herbig's playing tonight. Our own Dean Balker is playing a trumpet solo, and we've got the one and only Alfredo Cipolato singing an Italian song. As always, we start out with our national anthem. We're going to have a little twist today. On stage is our trombone quartet. We've got Don Gieselbeck, Pete McKenzie, John Nelson, and Gary Gillette. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please join us now as these gentlemen perform our special trombone version of our national anthem. Nicely done, gentlemen. Oh, let's see. We've got a couple of special announcements tonight. Where are the Friendship Force folks? Where are they? Yeah, there they are, right in the middle there. The Friendship Force of Missoula is here hosting other Friendship Force members from the eastern U.S. Friendship Force has about 270 clubs worldwide that promote one-week person-to-person homestays around the world. Well, all the best to you and your guests. We also have some happy birthdays. We got a 15th birthday for Laura and Rose. They're playing the clarinet. And to her grandma Valerie, visiting from the United Kingdom. So, let's give these folks a good happy birthday and welcome. Carrie and I just love that arrangement of happy birthday because we did it. Let's see, we have our George Rosencrantz du jour. That's coming up next. I believe that next to the Grampian Band in Grampian, Pennsylvania, the Missoula City Band has played more of George Rosencrantz music than any other group in the world. The Grampian Band was George's favorite, and he would premiere his new works with them, passing out the music with comments to individual players as how he wished the part to be played. When they played his work, he'd sit with his back to them, and while they played, he'd note changes he thought appropriate. This march was originally published by the famous bandsman Carl King in 1926. I've got some special folks in the audience I'd like to dedicate this march to. John and Atomi Parker, our neighbors, Good to see you here tonight. Where are you two?
They're way in the back.
They're way in the back. All right. Thank you. This is the Illuminator March. It's by George Hendricks Rosencrantz. We did that pretty good, Gary. Maybe we should stop. No, we can't stop. On stage, coming on stage now, is a Missoula icon. Every year for a number of years, we've celebrated our final concert, which is what this is, with a solo by Mr. Missoula himself, Alfredo Cipolato. There's a long list from a full life, so I'm just going to skim the surface of Alfredo's accomplishments. He was the owner of the famous Broadway Market. Boy, do I miss that store. He's a wine connoisseur. He's a longtime singer with the Mendelssohn Club and the Missoula City Band. He's an expert on Italian opera. And his greatest single accomplishment, I believe, is keeping the love of his lovely wife, Anne, all these years. Now, last year, Mayor Engen was on hand to proclaim this Alfredo Cipolato Day. So, Alfredo is 95 years young this year, and he's going to sing O Solo Mio.
I want to say one thing. The sole mio in Italia, sole is a sun, mio is mine. But it's not only mine, it's for everybody. You understand? Yeah, it's not for everybody. You can sing too if you want. Oh, sole mio, sai it's supposed to sit down? No, 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 no. Che bella cosa la giornata sola, all'aria fredda dopo la tempesta. Che bella festa, aggiornare la festa. Che bella cosa la giornata e sole. Mamma, tuo sole, che bello è me, oh sole mio, sei fronte a te, oh sole mio, sei fronte a me. La giornata sole, all'aria fredda, dopo la tempesta. Che bella festa, a suonare la festa. Che bella cosa, la giornata sole. Mamma, tuo sole, più bello è me, oh sole mio, sei fronte a me, oh sole mio, sei fronte a me. Sei pronta me. It's not my soul, it's not my soul, but it's for everybody around here. Capito? Con sole mio.
All right, man.
Thanks so much, Alfredo. Wonderful job. 95 years young. Wonderful. Absolutely. Let's give another round for Alfredo. Well, this might be a very appropriate time to ask our Band-Aid people. We've got Ashlyn Jordan, Janelle Lawrence, and Leslie Hiller. These folks are going to make their rounds amongst you. Folks, your support is so greatly appreciated. Thank you all so very much.
Remember, you don't have to
That was fortuitous. Gary was going to speak. And he was thwarted in his efforts. Very good. Okay, since this is our last concert of the year, it's more than appropriate to play another Rosencrantz March. However, there is a twist this time. We found a Rosencrantz who wrote marches, but wasn't our well-beloved George Rosencrantz, but rather Anton Rosencrantz. Anton Rosencrantz was active in Imperial Germany, and this next march, Mit Pack und Sack, was written in the 1890s. Oh, it's the other way around. Mit Sack und Pack was written in the 1890s. Oh, it was written. Let's see. Not commonly heard in the United States. It's a big hit in Europe and has not been out of print since the original date of publication. When first written, the march was especially popular with the German army, and Mit Sack und Pack meant you were going on military maneuvers. Today in Germany, the term Mit Sack und Pack is equivalent to our phrase, on the road again. I don't know about you, but after this, I'll never hear Willie Nelson's song in quite the same way. Mit Sack und Pack by Anton Rosencrantz. We have a special solo tonight from the band Gene Balker. Remember Miss Balker with acts of kindness. These are the words on the pendant worn by the students and faculty at Summers Middle School and by Dean Balker, our senior citizen trumpet soloist this evening. Dawn Marie Balker, his daughter, was killed last October when a drunk driver swerved into her lane. Good grief. Oh man, this caught me by surprise. when a drunk driver served in her lane about 6 a.m. as she was going to work to teach her sixth grade class. She was 27. Dean is dedicating this next number to Dawn and to those of you who have lost loved ones. Dawn visited from Big Fork to hear the band 2 years ago and looked forward to playing some clarinet with us this summer. I understand she was able to distinguish her dad's playing in the band. In memory of her loving and awesome, I practice this, and I didn't do this. All right. In memory of her loving and awesome spirit, we next perform Ode to Trumpet by Alfred Reed, and urge you to, indeed, honor her memory and smile, a life to remember with act of kindness. Here's Dean Walker with Ode to Trumpet dedicated to the memory of Dawn. Thanks, Dean. What a wonderful tribute to Dawn Marie. I think I can speak for everyone here tonight. Our thoughts and prayers are with you and yours. Thank you. Great job. Let's see. Edward Franco Goldman is one of America's prominent band composers of the early 20th century. He composed over 150 works. Most notable are his marches. He is known for founding the renowned Goldman Band of New York City and the American Bandmasters Association. When I was young, I happened to see the Goldman Band perform in Central Park under his son, Richard Goldman. It's something you never forget. Goldman's works are best known for their pleasant and catchy tunes, as well as their fine trios and solos. He also encouraged audiences to whistle or hum along with his marches. This has become a tradition with his most famous march, On the Mall, we're about to play for you. Feel free to whistle or hum along. Next up, we've got some selections from the Kevin Costner movie Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. So far, there have been 10 Robin Hood movies from 1908's Robin Hood and His Merry Men through 1993 Mel Brooks's lampoon Robin Hood, Men in Tights. Now many don't know this, and Gary's a very humble man, but our own Gary Gillette was nearly beat out of the title role in the Brooks film. There was chronic wardrobe failures. Darn the luck. The music you're about to... Boy, I kill me, I swear. The music you're about to hear was from the 1991 Kevin Costner movie, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. It's a great score written by Michael Kamen, and it includes the big hit, I'm sure you've all heard it, Everything I Do. Wow, great job, horn section. We also had some real nice solos from our oboe and our alto saxophone sections there. Really nice. Well, the Colonel Bogey March is a popular march that was written in 1914 by Lieutenant F.J. Ricketts. He was a military bandmaster who was director of music for the Royal Marines at Plymouth. Since at that time, service personnel were not encouraged to have professional lives outside of the armed forces, Ricketts published Colonel Bogey and all his other compositions under the pseudonym Kenneth Alfred. Supposedly, the tune was inspired by a military man and golfer who whistled a characteristic two-note phrase. That's it. That's off key. It's a descending minor third. Yes. Instead of shouting four. Anyway, it is that begins each line of the melody, made famous by the movie Bridge Over the River Kwai. And no, it's not the march from the movie from Bridge Over the River Kwai. Here's Colonel Bogey March.
Hey, audible.
Gary Herbig is taking the stand now. He's a mesmerizing classical soloist on all woodwind instruments and a Billboard Top 10 jazz artist. Internationally acclaimed recording artist Gary Herbig has done it all. His resume includes tours with Harry James and Elvis, as well as Tower of Power and the Percy Faith Orchestra, to name but a few. And dare I add right here and now, the Missoula City Band. Gary's artistic odyssey has taken him around the world, but at heart he remains a Big Sky country. A Missoula native son, he is the first to say that receiving a scholarship enabled him to attend the University of Montana, and the education he received changed his life. A proud music alumnus, class of 1969, Gary remains very grateful for that scholarship and returns to Missoula several times a year to help student musicians aspiring to follow in his footsteps. Tonight he's going to play Concerto Quasi Improvisando. Yeah, pretty good. It is. I never know what I'm going to say. Anyway, it's by James Domine. He's the director of San Fernando Valley Symphony Orchestra and wrote this piece for Gary to perform. Originally scored for orchestra, we're playing the band version. We have a special edition on electric bass for this number. We have Nick Korn, who just happens to be Steve Korn, who is in the horn section, his son. All right, so here's Gary Herbig, Concerto Quasi Improvisando. Well, it just doesn't get any better than that. Gary Herbig, ladies and gentlemen, wasn't that wonderful? Thanks, buddy. Oh, Gary's trying to talk again.
Yeah. Also, helping us out on drums, Eric Rolkel. How about that swinging drummer?
Thank you, Eric. It's none too true when they say all good things must come to the past, and this is our last concert for 2007. It is time for some thank yous. Thank you, Mayor Engen and the Missoula City Council for your continued support. Thanks to the sound crew of Jay Straw and Company. Thank you, fellas. You did great this year. Thanks to the band officer, Gary Gillette, Bill Hafey, Vicky Roach, myself, our band historian, Mr. Dick Johnson. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. As well as our band chaplain, Dan Dixon, who we can count on to intercede with a higher power through particularly difficult passages. He's not here. He's here in spirit. Our collectors, Corey Storer, Leslie Heller, Janelle Lawrence, Ashlyn Gordon, and Susan Paulson, thank you so much. A big, big thank you to our librarians, Amanda Tish and Debbie Ray. Whoa. Folks, I can't begin to tell you how much work is involved there. Thanks to all those band members who soloed with us, either in groups or individually. Thanks to our guest conductors this year, Jim Eversole and Bill Holland. Nice job last week, Bill. Thank you to all our guest artists. We have Ben Kirby, Roger Logan, the Missoula Sweet Adelines, Miss Annalise Aiken-Taylor, Ken Colson, Karen Callum, Gary Herbig, and Alfredo Cipolato. A huge thank you to the finest audience in the world. Bless you all. You're just wonderful. And I'm not going to presume to thank myself, but I wish to take this opportunity to say how honored I am to play a role in this fine organization. And thanks to every one of you who make up our band. Thank you folks so much. When's National Pirate Day? I think it's in September, isn't it? Last but certainly not least, there's someone who places so much time, work, and dedication into our organization that saying thank you just seems to come up short. It's been said that a conductor is the only musician who doesn't make a sound. Well, let me tell you, that person never heard Gary during rehearsals. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big thank you to our director, Mr. Gary Gillette. Thanks so much, Gary. Well, we have a tradition. We always close our season with America's March. Listen especially for Ben Kirby and Kyle Gillette as they play the piccolo part on their tubas. We're going to play John Philip Sousa's Stars and Stripes Forever.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next year, folks.